being that we've shot down so many of their aircrafts, like, has anybody like ever met one and like
sure,
talked with them, had meetings with them or anything like that?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely, it's happened. And yeah, I mean, I've worked with a number of people who have. Now, those are the guys that need to be under subpoena to come forward. And let me say something here. It should be obvious to anyone if you read between the lines, but let me connect the dots so it's obvious. A lot of people have been killed for exposing much less than this, right? So we also need the Congress to put in place a witness protection program for these guys, and also protection of their pensions and their assets. So, the ones who have had the most detailed involvement, the guys who just encounter accidentally something like those pilots did that were at the hearing, Mr. Grush, based on information we'd been getting to his bosses and others, was able to talk to the people who were involved, but he didn't get on the inside. So I want to make a distinction. The whistleblowers we have at the Disclosure Project are the people who actually handled the craft, actually worked at Lockheed, Skunk Works, actually were in commands and in facilities, had been in the underground bases and seen the ET craft there that we were trying to take apart and study, et cetera, and so on. Those are the people that need to be brought in. Because in my archive, we have several thousand pilot encounters like what you saw at that hearing. There's nothing new. In fact, the best ones were not even presented there. The best ones are the ones in our archive. But one of the problems is, to be honest with you, it is too much information. So we have like 8 terabytes of data. So what we have to do, we're trying to scan that into an archive database so it's searchable, and then curate the absolute best of all that to put in front of members of Congress and the media, because no one's going to go through 8 terabytes of data, right? I mean, it takes you years. So that's one of the things we're working on right now.
Okay. I mean, do you ever think there'll be a point to where aliens just pull up on Earth and they're just like, yo, we're here?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, that has happened, but it's gotten covered up. There have been a number of pretty spectacular events like that over the years have been covered up. Now, what you're suggesting is something we're planning for. So if you have Amazon or Tubi or any of these sites, you can see another documentary, a third one that I'd recommend you looking at, called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. So the original project I started was Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and we have an app, which is in the top 10 in the world for educational apps, called CE5 Contact. And CE5 Contact is sort of a training program for people to go out and make the kind of contact you're asking about. So the question you asked, has that happened? Yes, absolutely. Do we have proof of it? Yes. And look at the film, you'll see it. Now, those are unofficial. In other words, that's not being done by the State Department or UN or something. That is sort of a civilian group doing this, but it's pretty astonishing when you look at that documentary. It'll blow your mind. But what we eventually would like to see happen is this issue gets resolved and the official governments of the world reach out to these civilizations for the kind of meeting you're talking about. I think that could be set up, but we're not quite ready for that yet. And one thing that I know it's a little bit sounds like Star Trek, but there sort of is a prime directive that they don't just land on the White House lawn and force the whole world to know about them, because 2 reasons. First of all, the way a civilization like ours would react to that would be this sort of like alien invasion week on the History Channel or some nonsense. The other is that they need to be sure that the planet is prepared and that we quit lying to each other and educate each other about this in a way that isn't hysterical. Because most of the stuff out there on that subject is fear-mongering hysteria, as I mentioned, and it's been done deliberately for psychological warfare tactics. I have 2 CIA documents I can reference on that, by the way. 1953, CIA Director Smith said the UFO issue should be used for its psychological warfare value, meaning use it in a way that can convince people and manipulate people in a certain direction. That's what psychological warfare or psyops are. And then there's a 1985 document that we have proof exists, but we don't possess it yet. That is a CIA document where they were sending abduction squads down to Brazil and Argentina. And this isn't an official CIA document, using these advanced technologies and these fake alien-looking creatures. Most of the ones you talked about, like the bug-eyed, those are man-made kind of like robotic things. They're not ETs. And those were used to abduct and torture peasants, as it says. This is a 1985 document in Argentina and Brazil. And this is an official document. And then we have an Air Force intelligence guy on our team who we have his deposition on videotape where he says, absolutely, we've been staging these abductions. Now, if you were to go on the street and ask 1,000 people, have you heard of alien abductions? Oh, yeah. And they all think it's, of course, ET's doing it. I'm going, nope, that's a covert psyop. So I think that's one of the big issues here is that the world has to get educated on the whole spectrum of this secrecy and cover-up, so that before the ETs are going to land, out in the desert and say, hi, y'all, right? And unfortunately, we're not starting at base camp trying to go up Mount Everest. We're starting down 20,000 leagues under the ocean because there's been so much false information that's made its way through Hollywood, pop culture, even the music industry, that has to be corrected. And, a lot of that, like I said, that whole operation was launched in 1953. Even before I was born, man. So, a long time ago. And we have to really provide education to correct that. And we have to expose the lie. We have to expose the truth, but you have to expose the big lie. Since most of the information out there on this subject is some form of curated counterintelligence, disinformation, false information. So, unfortunately, it's not as simple as people think. It's a rather complex mess.
What's up? This is Cam Capone. We got more content like this coming soon, so hit that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in to Cam Capone News.